Welcome to UFHL Now! A close-up look at the ultimate fantasy hockey league. The most realistic fantasy gameplay. High stakes. High reward. Here's your host, the owner of Duckman's domination in the UFHL and the mighty Mallards of the UFAHL, Dean Millard.
Hello there and welcome to UFHL Now, highlighting the best fantasy league on the planet. And we are doing so thanks to Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We are broadcasting proudly on UFSN. If you would like to join the network, if you have a daily, weekly, monthly show that you think fits with our fantasy sports platform, please join us and get a hold of us on Twitter at UFS Network, or you can email us UFSN at UFFsports.com. You can also give a follow to these guys, Ducks Domination on Twitter. Also the proud owner of the Mighty Mallards, an affiliation with High Level Scouting in the UFFS platform. We always like to highlight things that happen from week to week in the UFHL, and we'll do that again with some new names this week. Guys like Sam Bennett and Matt Murray joining the reward tour, as we might call it here on UFHL Now, taking a look at the best players since last Friday. Shea Theodore also poking his head in this week and making his presence known for some teams. Begrudgingly, we're going to take a look at the top five plus-minus winners or leaders in the UFHL Now. But just before we get going, let's just hear from everybody who loves plus-minus. I thought I saw somebody at the back maybe that was wanting to put their hand up, but they were just stretching, I guess. I don't know anybody that likes plus-minus, so I can't wait to get rid of it. I've made that perfectly clear. So hopefully we will get rid of it this summer at the owners' meetings. We'll also revisit the top 10 standings as we do each week, and some movement this week in the standings. And the gap between first and second is a lot closer than I thought it ever might get to. So I still think Red Army's going to finish on top, but maybe at some point they dip out of first. I don't know. I think they'll come strong this weekend. Steinbrenner will get them going for sure. And of course, Larry Fisher will join us for our weekly visit as our UFHL insider. If you haven't, check out UFFsports.com. If you're in the league, you obviously have. But if you're just checking this show out and you want to know what this amazing league is all about, there's the website, www.uffsports.com. You can find out exactly what this ecosystem is all about. All right, when we return after this quick word from UFSN, we'll dive into the top performers of the past week.
You're watching the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, UFSN, your one-stop fantasy shop. Get in touch on Twitter at UFS Network. Email us, UFSN at UFFsports.com.
All right, taking a look at the top performers, and as mentioned, nice to see some new names joining the fray as far as weekly contributors, because one of them is Sam Bennett. He was just traded to Florida, and we chatted last week about guys that have a bit of a pickup since the trade deadline. This is definitely one of them. 5 points since his trade to Florida, so he's shining in the Sunshine State, FLA. 17 of his 19 penalty minutes came versus Columbus in the second game with the Panthers, so kind of announcing his presence, as they said in Bull Durham. And just a great way to introduce himself to his new teammates and things like that. Brad Marchand, plus-minus star. Again, I don't like it, but it's in our league. He also had a 4-point game versus the Capitals, and Connor McDavid, an 8-point week, back-to-back 3-point games versus Montreal, and he also threw out some hits as well, picking up some points with the man advantage for the Oilers. Also, let's check out Shea Theodore, 5 assists, 4 points in 2 games. Back-to-back games, he had 2 points each, and he's putting up a lot of shots as well, double digits in the shot category, contributing on the power play as well. The Express absolutely loving that. The Snipers, they get 2 bagels from Matt Murray, 3-0 on the season, 2 shutouts, 80 saves for the Snipers. They absolutely love that. And, you know, one of the reasons the Ice Vikings have closed the gap, as you will see in a little bit, is Alex Nedeljkovic, 20.5 points this week, 85 saves, 3-0 record. Very, very impressive from the goaltender. All right, now let's get to everybody's favorite stat.
Child, please.
It's plus minus. And Nathan MacKinnon and Leon Draisaitl, they're both in the top 5 overall with fantasy points. One of the reasons is plus minus. I'm not saying they wouldn't be there without the plus minus for sure, but definitely they are top players, and so is Brad Marchand. So McKinnon leads the way. Everybody else is tied at 25. Joel Edmondson in there for Rock Republic. And how about Devin Taves? I think he's a really underrated fantasy player. I have him. Yeah, I had him in 2 leagues. One of the leagues I just left, but there's certain guys that I always just look for in drafts that I know are going to be dependable. You know, this is a guy on the second pairing that's, you know, putting up a lot of points and fantasy stats because Colorado is such an impressive team. And, you know, he was good for the Islanders, was Taves, and now he's playing really, really well, albeit in not on a top pairing role for the Avalanche. As for the top 10 standings now, Red Army still leading the way. We'll show you how close the gap is in a second. The Ice Vikings made a move, shifting ahead of the Titans. The Outlaws broke loose of the Royals as the Royals dropped to 5. Rock Republic, Stingray, Yetis, and Grizzlies, same place, and the Gators chomping their way into the top 10, raising 2 spots from 12 last week. Who wouldn't want to see a Gators and a Grizzlies fight? Like, you know, if I could get the Grizzlies NFT on that, I would like to buy the actual Grizzly Bear NFT for that fight. That would be highly entertaining. So a little movement in the standings, and here's how close things look. At the top, a 15.35 lead. What will Steinbrenner do to motivate his team? Is Shesterkin go on another shutout streak here? Wow, it is very, very close, and then you can see how things play out for the rest of the top 10 standings. Fun stuff, as always, here in the UFHL, including our UFHL insider, Larry Fisher, next.
Time to get the scoop on the UFHL with our insider, Larry Fisher. He's had lines in the water all week long. What will he reel in for us today? Let's dive in and find out what's going on with the UFHL. Now!
Let's bring in the UFHL insider, Larry Fisher, right now. And Larry, so, you know, we kind of joked after the trade deadline about, maybe you could put your feet up and relax. But there always is something going on in the UFHL and the UFFS in bigger terms. So I know you've been a busy guy, so glad that you could spend some time with us here on the UFHL Insider, and we're gonna kind of discuss a couple of things when it comes to midseason owner meetings and midseason rankings when it comes to the 2021 draft. So let's start with your thoughts on some of the things that are happening this Sunday with the first midseason owner meeting.
Yeah, Dean. So a big week for the UFHL franchises. They are doing their annual midseason owners meetings, which actually the NHL Board of Governors and GMs just met this week as well to kind of, what this is just sort of an update, a roadmap of what's to come technically over the second half of the season, which includes those early postseason events such as the entry auction, the expansion draft, the futures auction. So we kind of just draw out the roadmap of what's to come between now and August 1st or July 28th when free agency starts, just so everybody's prepared. Mostly a Q&A type meeting. Not a lot of decisions get made here, but one decision that will be made is the entry fee vote. Setting, hopefully it'll be in place by May 1st. We'll vote ahead of May 1st, and that'll give the franchises, a little over 2 months. Entry fee will be due 48 hours after the Stanley Cup final concludes. As of now, barring COVID delays, the latest the Stanley Cup final will go is July 9th would be Game 7. So it would be due on July 11th or somewhere in around there, early July, for the entry fee. So that'll be the big item of debate at the midseason owners meetings, is just determining what that entry fee will be. And the entry fee in the UFHL will always be linked to the prize pool from the previous season, a percentage of that prize pool. And of course, the prize pool caps on the trade deadline, which was April 12th. So we now have the total prize pool, which actually was $51,396.52 American. Very exciting. $31,396.52 dedicated to the 2021 prize pool, with deferrals of $10,000 USD for both 2022 and 2023, which the franchises voted in favor of at the offseason meetings in October prior to the start of this season. But so you take that $31,396.52, and essentially there could be up to 5 voting options. That could be narrowed down to 3, down to 2. The franchises will debate what they want for how many options they want to vote on and what options they'll be. But the percentages are now locked in. And you look at 1% is 310 USD. So this year's entry fee was 200 USD for the franchises for the 2021 season. Looking ahead to 2022, the minimum will now be 310 as the lowest voting option. If you go up to 2%, it's obviously $630. You go to 3%, it's $940. And then you get to the potential high stakes as far as entry fees and pumping that prize pool up in a hurry. If you go to 5%, you're at $1,570 entry fee. And if you wanted to go all the way up to 10% of the prize pool, you'd be at $3,140 USD. So I don't imagine the franchises will want to vote on all 5 options. They'll probably want to narrow that down to 3 or possibly even 2. So there'll be some debate in the owners' meetings this Sunday as to which options, which percentages will be put to a vote and how many, and then obviously how that vote will be processed as far as the procedure and for future decisions, because there'll be other agenda items that'll require a vote as well, Dean. And the way that'll work is in the NHL, obviously it's a 2/3 majority vote required to make any changes. So with the Bentley Jacks, the Seattle Kraken joining the leagues, that is 22 out of 32 franchises have to vote in favor of a change in order for it to be implemented. Otherwise, less than 22 out of 32 would remain status quo. Now, that wouldn't obviously apply to the entry fee because that would be more of a majority rules likely thing. But if we're talking about getting rid of plus minus, which I know me and you are both a big proponent of, if we're saying let's get rid of plus minus and bring in block shots, do you need 22 out of 32 franchises voting in favor of that change? Or is, 16 would be half of 32, so is 17 out of 32 enough? Or do you need that 2/3 majority with the extra 5 in favor to get it up to 22? So that'll be some of the decisions that'll be made at this mid-season owners meeting as far as the entry fee vote and the as well as just the way that the voting process and procedures will play out.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. Some of these things I felt differently about a year ago. And then as we get into gameplay and different things, you talk to different people, you hear different opinions. Even some of the opinions I remember and some of the things that people were saying from the last year's meetings still ring true to me today. Even though I didn't agree with them then, I've thought about them in different situations and feel differently. And one of those things is kind of the prize pool payout structure. I felt very strongly about it last year, and I'm a little bit different about it this year as well. And I think a lot of people are now that they've seen kind of a season run its course here.
Certainly, depending where you are in the standings, people have a different opinion too. And then we've talked about it in the past. People always kind of have their own best interests in mind a lot of times, which Duckman's is rebuilding, is at the bottom of the standings. It's nice to get a token payout, right? But what some franchises have brought forward, and again, maybe these are franchises that are at first place or second place, they're saying, hey, we built this juggernaut of a team. The prize pool's 31,000, whatever, 32,000. We're only getting, we're putting all this time, effort, money in. And I mean, not that a 7,500 or an 8,000 USD payout is anything to scoff at, but it's not an eye-popping number. So there has been a motion put forward that perhaps we reanalyze the prize pool payout structure, and we do limit it to only the playoff franchises. So you need to make the playoffs in order to get a payout. Obviously, that changes things for rebuilding franchises. Would say, hey, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't have blown up my roster and went into rebuild if I knew I wasn't getting any payout for the upcoming season. So part of that, there was a disclaimer there that maybe it starts in 2024, where starting in 2024, only the 16 playoff franchises receive a regular season payout. And then somebody else said, well, why the 16 playoff franchises? Why not the top 16 seeds? Because as we're seeing this year, likely somebody outside the top 16 in regular season standings based on divisions and 4 seeds from each division making the playoffs. Right now, I believe the Stallions are in 20th place overall, but they would get the 16th prize pool payout as a playoff franchise, being the 4th seed from the Gretzky division. So some want to only pay the 16 playoff seeds. Some want to only pay the top 16 from the regular season, nobody below that. So there's talk of putting, and this, like I said, this was debated heavily at the off-season meetings in October, whether or not we wanted a full revenue sharing type system where right from 1 to 31 or now 1 to 32 with the Bentley Jacks on a sliding scale, everybody gets a piece of the pie. There's a payout for every franchise. Or do you want to raise the stakes, raise the competitiveness, and say you need to make the playoffs in order to get a payout, or you need to be a top 16 franchise in order to get a payout, which of course then bumps, you're probably adding, at least $5,000 to $10,000 into the top 10 franchises are all going up by $1,000, you can say, or more. So people want some eye-popping numbers at the top. Even this season, 8,000 is great. What if it was 10? What if it was 15,000 for first place? What if it tailed off quicker from first to fifth? Maybe there's a little bit more drastic drop as far as percentage of the prize pool goes for each spot. Lots of ideas there. I mean, we had lots of algorithm options to determine the prize pool for 2021. There are people that would like to revisit that and at least talk about it during this meeting, because one thing we know for sure, Dean, is that prize pool structure will impact some franchises' vote as far as the entry fee goes, right? It changes. If that prize pool structure, the payouts change, that could potentially change your entry fee vote. So it's something that needs to be up for discussion. But again, I think the people who want to change the prize pool are very open to changing it starting in 2024, when this rebuilding 3-year window is sort of surpassed. Because right now, franchises own their entry auction draft picks for 21, 22, and 23. So some franchises have already acquired 2023 draft picks and some have traded them away. So naturally, if you were going to make a drastic change like that to the prize pool, you could start in 2024, which gives everybody that 3-year window to get competitive again, knowing you need to make the playoffs in 3 years in order to get a payout. So that's some of the ideas that have been put forth on prize pool structure.
Yeah, and listen, I still think every owner should get a piece of the pie. We should have some sort of revenue sharing. We don't have a TV deal where money gets spread around. We don't have ticket sales that we charge at the door that everybody. So I think every team should get a piece of the pie. But I also agree, and maybe it's a different portion of the pie. And I'm fine if we only pay out the playoff leaders or whatever, if there's top 16. But every owner every year should get something back for being in this league with some of the money that is raised. And I'll argue for that. I have no problem for non-playoff teams not getting into the playoff money or that money. But I think should be some sort of revenue sharing, whether it's $40, which is able to go out and make a trade or two or things like that. I think there should be something. But that's what Sunday is for, and we'll all be able to talk about it, as well as this cool idea that we discussed a little while back about franchise tokens for possibly shareholders.
And I think this idea, Dean, again, another great idea from Tony, but I think it's almost from people that have reached out to me and reached out to Tony, it seems basically unanimous. The founders would like to move forward with this. They've already talked to Zilka's development team about how that would work on the tech end, but essentially you get 100 franchise tokens, represents 100% of your franchise. You can sell as many as you want. Fans, scouts, people that want to become franchise owners can make offers on as many tokens as they want. And what that allows is right now on the platform, if you want to make an offer on a franchise, you're making an offer on 100% of Duckmans. You got to buy the entire franchise. If Duckmans wants to sell, put the franchise on the sale block, franchises for sale in the marketplace, you're putting 100% all of Duckman's domination on that franchise for sale marketplace at a set price. What we want to do with tokenizing franchises is, again, make the 100 tokens and you distribute them as you see fit within your organization. So maybe the scout owns, 5 tokens and the GM owns some, or however you want to distribute it within your staffing structure. But after that, you can take, if Duckman's wanted to sell 20%, 20 tokens at 20%, and you could list them just as 20 tokens instead of the entire franchise. And likewise, if you start getting a following, fans, supporters, people that are on Duckman's bandwagon, if they want to buy just 1% of the franchise to feel like they own a little bit, hey, they can make you an offer of $500 for 1% or whatever the case. So it just allows a lot more flexibility and just the ability for franchises to, when they're tokenized, to really sell shares and bring on shareholders and investors, which we see as the future of this platform. Again, as these franchises become worth, now we're into 5 figures, but what about when they're 6 figures or 7 figures? We want to be able to have shareholders at 1% or 10% or whatever the franchises are willing to sell and whatever the fans, the shareholders are willing to invest. But we want to make that create more freedom and more flexibility there by tokenizing the franchises with 100 tokens versus always having to sell or make an offer on 100% of the franchise.
Okay, so this Sunday, a lot of league issues are going to be discussed, and we're also going to hear from some of the scouts, a presentation from the scouts. And I know that there's been a lot of people working hard behind the scenes of the scouting department to put this presentation together.
Yeah, specifically Nelson Martins of the Wise Guys and Mick Portoni of still of Draft in Europe. He runs Draft in Europe as a real world business, has it as a scouting agency on the UFFS platform. But Mick obviously is also now a consultant type role with the Can West scouting agency. But Mick and Nelson have been heading up and forming a UFFS scouting committee. And that committee is going to make a presentation to the UFHL franchises, to the owners at this midseason meeting with they've highlighted 4 concerns that scouts have that they feel need to be addressed in the ecosystem for UFFS to ensure scouts are valued and profitable to the point that they should be. And so there'll be 2 documents sent out later today for franchises to review ahead of that presentation. So you have an idea of what's coming in the presentation, but likely 15 to 30 minutes on Sunday, the scouts will have the floor and they will make a presentation on 4 areas where they think UFFS could change in order to improve the scouting experience and to give them a bigger voice and some adjustments to the algorithm, which obviously takes us into the entry auction topic, where again they've presented their own algorithm and their own way to calculate specifically second round draft picks and how many franchises should be the minimum bidding on each draft pick rather than allowing a franchise to slide down and get a block of 5 picks and be able to select a prospect at the minimum bid. There should always be a minimum number of franchises bidding on every pick, stuff like that. So they have 4 areas of concern, 4 proposed changes that they're going to put forth in a presentation, and franchises will be able to do a bit of a Q&A there and have some feedback on the presentation while the scouts are there to answer the franchise's questions. And then some of that may be put to a vote, whether it's for 2021's entry auction or for 2022 and going forward. But certainly the scouts would like the franchises to hear them out and hear their reasoning for why they think 4 areas of the platform could be tweaked in order to further benefit and grow the scouting side of the platform.
I'm looking forward to hearing some of these things. Obviously, I have an affiliation. My wife, Trish, is very interested to hear back about how things are received from the owners. And, I think as owners, we owe it to the scouts to go into this with an open mind, hear their concerns, think about their concerns, and then come back with some possible resolutions. Because as we talk about all the time, scouts are the lifeblood of the entire platform. Every player is registered, by a scout before they come into the league, other than when the leagues start up. That kind of takes us into the draft lottery. What sort of things will we be discussing when it comes to the draft lottery on Sunday?
Yeah, a few franchises have reached out and said, hey, I'm in this position in the standings. How does this work with the lottery? They know that the NHL has changed rules for this season. Well, the UFHL and the NHL changed, just a month ago, mid-season, and they're implementing them for 2021. So the UFHL always does our best to mirror the NHL. So we are using the new draft lottery rules, which instead of doing 3 draws, there'll now only be 2 draws to determine the franchises, any franchise that missed the playoffs. So there'll be 16 franchises, counting the Bentley Jacks as the expansion franchise, will be part of that lottery. 2 of them will move into the top 5, which is bidding on first overall. Beyond that, it'll just be reverse order of standings, the way it works in the NHL. And actually, to simplify the process of the draft lottery, we'll still make an event of it. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the stars of the show, Liz and Andrea, to coordinate this and make it an event. But essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to run the tankathon.com simulator, which attaches all of the UFHL franchises to the NHL equivalent. So whoever finishes last in the NHL will be paired up with whoever finishes with Duckmans, or whoever finishes last in the UFHL, second last, and so on down. The Bentley Jacks will be paired up at 3rd overall with Seattle Kraken for the odds. And the percentages are already built into the Tankathon simulator. Andrea and Liz, or myself, whoever runs the draft lottery event, and it'll be done on the same night, probably a half hour after the NHL draft lottery. But much like we did last season, we try to mirror the timeline. So our draft lottery in the UFHL will be the same night as the NHL draft lottery, date to be determined as of today. But they'll hit the button, the simulator will play out once, and it'll show the 2 franchises that won the lottery and got those 2 spots in the top 5, and it'll show the rest of the draft order going down from 1 to 16, and then from there it'll be the teams that lose out in the playoffs. Same way the draft format and draft order in the UFHL will work the exact same as the NHL. As we always like to say, Dean, when somebody has a question about the draft lottery or something, it's how does it work in the NHL? What is the NHL doing? That's what we try to emulate here in the UFHL, and no different with the draft lottery, which will use the Tankathon simulator rather than our own lottery system to ensure that we have the exact correct odds attached to each franchise, and we'll just pair them up with their NHL equivalent, and we'll hit the button, and everybody will live with the results of the Tankathon simulator.
Also, there's going to be a lot of questions, I'm sure, about the playoff draft, especially with the unknown about the NHL possibly starting the playoffs before, the North Division even gets finished up and things like that. I know we're going to cover the expansion draft and free agency and buyouts as well. And, these are a lot of the things that, owners, teams like Duckman's Domination have had a lot of time to do this, because we are clearly out of the playoffs. But there's a lot of people that have been focused on, first the trade deadline and whatever they can do. Maybe they haven't had as much time to focus on these things, so they'll get an opportunity to ask their questions this Sunday about those 3 items.
Exactly, and it's mostly going to be a Q&A, open floor discussion. Hopefully, as you mentioned on Telegram, Dean, hopefully all the franchises and owners and GMs have taken the time to read the UFHL rulebook, because these events are by and large outlined in there as well. So we're just going to clarify some things. We're going to field some questions so everybody's on the same page, so you don't get to the playoff draft and say, oh, I didn't know I had to waive this guy, or I couldn't take him off my roster, I couldn't put him on, right? We're going to clear the air. So hopefully owners will come with questions. If obviously we'll continue to answer questions in the owners group on Telegram leading up to the event. I'm sure we'll get the same question 10 times in some situations, but here's a chance where we're all on the same video conference. You can ask and we can debate a little bit, but by and large, everything's decided, and it's just going over the format, the rules, the process, and how everything's going to be done for the playoff draft, the expansion draft, and as you mentioned, free agency and buyouts. And buyouts, we had an idea come forward because free agency we know is new this season. We're going to do it where if the player is an unrestricted or a restricted free agent up until that qualifying deadline offer or deadline for qualifying offers and the official start of NHL free agency, if your player is a free agent, once their season's done, after they're out of the playoffs or if they miss the playoffs, if they're a pending free agent, you can release them to free agency. Say, no, I'm not signing this player. I'm not inheriting their new contract in the NHL. They're free to go and they'll go into the free agent pool. With buyouts, going back to the inaugural offseason last year, the way it worked there as well was if a player got bought out in the NHL, Bobby Ryan, for example, you automatically inherited his new contract and you had to retain the player. He was on your roster. Obviously, when a player gets bought out in the NHL, usually their next contract, it's actually a bonus. You probably want to keep the player if he's still somewhat productive because he's going to get a much cheaper cap hit, and it's a good thing. But I think the proposal put forth was that buyouts in the NHL or terminated contracts, which sometimes a player's contract gets terminated for whatever reason, buyouts and terminated contracts should be treated the same as free agency. And then somebody said there should be a 24-hour window, so you got to be paying attention. But if your player gets bought out or their contract gets terminated in the NHL, you have a 24-hour window to walk away from that player and release that player as a free agent to be auctioned off if and when they do sign another new NHL contract, then they would go to a free agent auction. So the ability to walk away from buyouts or terminated contracts is another proposal that, in my opinion, makes sense. Now that we're doing free agency, why not include players that are bought out? Because when you're bought out or your contract's terminated in the NHL, you are a free agent. So you probably should be a free agent or eligible to be a free agent in the UFHL as well. So that's another new idea that's come up. But generally speaking, it'll be open floor discussion, Q&A on expansion draft, playoff draft first and foremost, because that's the next event within the next month, then the expansion draft, and then the offseason stuff with free agency and buyouts.
Well, I can tell you, as you alluded to that rule book, it is thorough. I'm going through it line by line right now as I build the rule book for the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, and using it as a bit of a reference. And I'm pretty sure every question, unless something has been changed recently, will be answered there if people first check it out. It's a big it's a big document, but it's worth going through so that you're up to date. Plus, you can impress all your friends with all your NHL CBA knowledge, because there's a lot of it in there as well. Some great knowledge as well, Larry, in the mid-season rankings as far as the 2021 draft. And I know you're busy compiling this thing and you're going to have an article, but let's take a sneak peek at some of the things you found interesting in the mid-season rankings.
Yeah, so obviously Monday's the big reveal. The mid-season UFFS consensus mid-season draft rankings will be published on Monday morning, which coincides with the start of the under-18 Worlds, which is perfect timing because you don't want to have that recency bias of watching all these kids shine and then bumping them up your draft rankings. And as we see in the NHL realm, Bob McKenzie, all the big scouting agencies, Elite Prospects, everybody else has put out their draft rankings ahead of the under-18 Worlds, their mid-season rankings. That's sort of the way it always works. You want to get your rankings out prior to this event. And so the UFFS scouts have compiled their rankings as well. And we had 6 scouts or agencies submit their draft rankings, and we obviously averaged them out to determine a consensus. And you can actually check out those rankings right now on the UFHL Google Sheets. There is a 2021 draft mid-season rankings tab there, so you can check out the rankings. But getting into the rankings, Dean, no real surprise with Owen Power staying at number 1. Bob McKenzie polled 10 NHL scouts. Owen Power was number 1 for all 10. He was unanimous number 1 in Bob McKenzie's polling of 10 NHL employed team scouts. In the UFHL, not unanimous, actually. He was 4 out of the 6 had him at number 1. One scout had him at number 3, and actually another scout had him at number 4. So it's not as unanimous in the UFFS scouting community, but Owen Power remains the favorite to be the big prize at the UFHL entry auction as far as the bidding war for number 1 goes. Rounding out the top 5, Owen Power is followed by 3 forwards, Matty Beniers, Dylan Genther, and William Eklund. And then at number 5, again, rounding out the top 5 is Luke Hughes, who's the younger brother of Quinn Hughes in Vancouver and Jack Hughes in New Jersey. Luke's a defenseman, and unlike his brothers, he's got some size to him. Their dad's actually a fair-sized guy, and Luke's got his dad's size. He's a little over 6 feet, maybe 6'2", and he's a solid player, but he still skates like Quinn Hughes. So you look at those top 5. I know a lot of people say the 2021 draft is not as top heavy. It doesn't have the Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or the real premier prospect. But if you're in the bidding for a top 5 pick and you're looking at those 5 players after the 2021 NHL first round on July 23rd, when that takes place, I think you'd be happy with any of Owen Power, Matty Beniers, Dylan Genther, William Eklund, or Luke Hughes as a top 5. I think the UFFS scouts did a really good job with their rankings for it to average out with that top 5. I like that. The big riser amongst the top 10 was William Eklund. He's up 9 spots to 4th overall for the consensus rankings. He was at 13th, just outside the top 10 in our preliminary rankings, which were published on December 1st. Carson Lambos, kind of the opposite. He dropped 10 spots to 14th. And again, what would that be different if the Winnipeg Ice had a full season and the WHL had a full season with playoffs, and Winnipeg's a powerhouse in the WHL this season? They might have been Edmonton with Dylan Gunther is a powerhouse too, but potentially Winnipeg would have been right there in that Eastern Conference final, maybe representing the WHL at the Memorial Cup, which unfortunately was canceled as well. But so Carson Lambos' draft stock, I know he went overseas and played, I believe, in Sweden. Had a decent showing there, but his draft stock may be different if Winnipeg had been playing all year in the WHL. But he's down 10 spots to 14th. William Eklund is up 9 spots to 4th. So essentially those two flipped. They traded spots. And then you look at, again, Sweden had essentially a full season compared to a lot of the other countries. So a guy like Jesper Wallstad, a goaltender playing pro in the SHL, has played his way into the top 10 as the consensus top goaltender for this draft class. Sebastian Casa of the Edmonton Oil Kings, I have him ranked 19th. Personally, I was the highest of the 6 UFFS scouts on Sebastian Casa, but I think he's starting to challenge Jesper Wallstad to a degree. But Jesper Wallstad, who's actually a high-level scouting prospect, is the consensus top goaltender for this draft class. With so much uncertainty at the top of the draft, I think there's a lot of people who believe Jesper Wallstad could even be a top 5 pick. Look at Detroit. They don't necessarily have a goaltender of the future for the Red Wings. They love their Swedes. Detroit's likely going to be picking somewhere in the top 10. Jesper Wallstad to Detroit could be a pretty obvious prediction for a lot of mock drafts, but he works his way into the top 10 of the UFFS midseason rankings. And on the flip side, Atu Ratty, who is one of the real preseason favorites to go first overall. If you look at draft rankings from a year out, last January or last April, let's look ahead to 2021. Like if we were to look ahead now to 2022 with Shane Wright and Brad Lambert being those top guys, Atu Ratty was the top guy a year ago at this time. He has now slid out of the top 10 in the UFFS draft rankings, dropping from 8th to 12th. And that's in line with what NHL scouts and other scouting agencies have put out their rankings. Atu Ratty is become one of the big fallers. He's no longer in the conversation for first overall, and now he's slipping out of that conversation for the top 10. Again, not looking at a guy who's going in the other direction. The biggest riser overall of the UFFS scouting rankings, midseason rankings, was Matt Coronado, who's having a record-breaking season for USHL Chicago Steel, that powerhouse at the USHL level, and he's sort of leading the way offensively there. Kind of an all-purpose forward. He can score, he can play make, but I don't know if he has any real standout qualities and maybe that's why we're not talking about him as a top 10 prospect, despite the fact he's breaking records at that level. And his supporting cast obviously helps. He's got Sean Farrell there and Mackie Samaskovich, who's another, I probably butchered that last name, but I'll call him Mackie, another high-end forward, Josh Doan, guys like that with the Chicago Steel. But Matt Coronado has been the biggest riser for the UFFS scouts soaring all the way from 66th. So he was outside the top 64 as of December 1st, all the way up to 15th. And actually going back to those December 1st draft rankings, the preliminary rankings, only 2 scouts, myself and Brian Hernandez, had Matt Coronado in the top 64. So you can see how much his stock has really been on the rise, thanks to the season that the Chicago Steel have had, but certainly himself as well, as a record-breaking campaign, all the way up to 15th overall at the midseason rankings. And Matt Coronado could be a guy that continues to climb and might be knocking on the door for the top 10 by the time the draft gets here in July.
You know, it's so interesting when you talk about Jesper Wallstedt. I'm very happy to see him, crashing the top 10, because I was advising Trish on the bidding day of Jesper Wallstedt for high-level scouting. And, Larry, I think you could identify this. I think my goaltending crush got a little bit involved. And as soon as, Trish had won it, I immediately almost had buyer's remorse, because I think we spent like $450 on it. And I'm like, oh, he's going to have to really pay off. And at that time, he wasn't, considered a top 10. So it's good to see him rising. But I think the goaltender excitement in me got a little bit too much caught up in that as I was advising Trish. So hopefully that certainly pays out. What about when you're talking about the total rankings, as far as, consensus first round picks and some of those statistics?
Yeah, so I did crunch the numbers, and these are always interesting numbers to take a look at. So there are 17 consensus first-round prospects. So again, 6 scouts, agencies within the UFFS platform submitted their midseason draft rankings. 17 players were in the first round in the top 32 on all 6 lists. So you can say we have 17 consensus first-round prospects. If you take it to the top 64, so first and second round prospects, essentially that number doubles, which goes from 17 to 35. So 35 prospects were ranked in the top 64 by all 6 scouts, but that leaves 29 prospects, essentially a full round of prospects that were interchangeable. Some guys had them ranked, some guys didn't. And, in some cases, 5 out of 6 had a prospect. In some cases, only one scout had a guy in their top 64 and the other 5 didn't. So there was, and this draft year more so than any other, because of the inconsistencies with the amount of viewings we've had of every different prospect in this draft class, and quality of competition has been hard to judge, and some of these bubbles and different division alignments that they've played where they haven't played their full league and their full draft class. But the way I see it is there's going to be a lot more surprises, a lot more wow picks. I would, and especially with even the top 10 being pretty wide open, I think this draft, I've always been a big mock draft guy. That's been one of my niches as a reporter, a draft scout, as well as a reporter. I love doing the mock drafts. I'm not doing one for 2021, and I'm glad I'm not, because, maybe we'll organize one with the UFFS scouts, but it's a crapshoot this year. It's going to be impossible. The mock drafts will be probably destroyed and crumpled up and thrown in the garbage by 10th overall. And certainly when you get out of the top 32 and into that top 64, but a bit surprising that 35 prospects were consensus, first, second round picks. 35 out of 64 were on all 6 lists. And then, as it mentioned there at the bottom, there was 104 different prospects were ranked in the top 64. So 104 players made at least one appearance in a top 64 for one of those 6 UFFS scouts. So interesting that many players, 104, have cracked the top 64 at least once.
Well, it is going to be an interesting draft, and I feel sorry for anybody doing a mock draft. But as Craig Button pointed out a few weeks back, don't you dare put an asterisk beside this draft. He was very passionate about that. And don't tell him Connor Bedard can't play in the top 3 at the U18s. I found that out when I questioned him on tracking the draft this week. All right, love the insider advice every week. What are you going with this week as far as advice for the owners and those involved in the UFHL?
Yeah, so I don't have a ton of advice this week, but one thing I would like the owners and franchises to pay attention to is that entry draft or entry auction algorithm, which has been updated thanks to Nathan Bender. He's went through and linked the entry auction algorithm to the mid-season draft rankings. And so if you're on UFHL sheets tonight or between now and Monday when the draft rankings become official and public, as far as the article goes, you can check out those 2 tabs, the mid-season draft rankings and then flip over to the entry auction algorithm, which is now updated based on the top 64, consensus top 64 from the UFFS Scouts midseason. And actually, if you scroll all the way over to the right within that tab of the entry auction algorithm, we still have the preseason percentages there as well. So you can compare the cost, the minimum bid per draft spot, and how it changed, how it fluctuated based on the changes in the draft rankings. And again, the thing that everybody needs to know here, both scouts and franchises, is these algorithms that we're putting out for the entry auction are essentially just a guideline, just a measuring stick of if this prospect, if Owen Power goes first overall, this is what the minimum bid would be for the entry auction. For the 5 franchises bidding on first overall. They wouldn't have to bid on Owen Power, but if they bid on first overall, it would be that price if Owen Power went first overall. And so it's just a guideline, but it's worth looking at for the franchises. And, you know, the trade deadline's passed, but there's going to be another window to trade prior to the entry auction in July. So pay attention to that algorithm. You can cross-reference, okay, right now, based on the standing, especially after the regular season wraps up in the UFHL, and after that draft lottery in the UFHL, then you know, here's where I'm picking right now. Well, if I look there, and if this prospect goes there, it's going to be a $200 minimum bid, and I'm going to be bidding against 5 other franchises, but I'm only budgeting $100 for the entry auction. Well, maybe I need to trade down or trade that pick away or hope a different prospect goes in that spot that maybe lowers that a little bit. But generally speaking, that's a guideline for what you're going to have to spend as a minimum in the entry auction if you're going to be bidding on prospects. So pay attention to that entry auction algorithm tab in UFHL Google Sheets, which is now updated thanks to Nathan Bender's handiwork. So the midseason draft rankings are there. The entry auction algorithm is updated. And all you need to know as far as the scouting side contributing to the entry auction is now available at UFHL Sheets. So be sure to check that out and then see where the prospects land and how that would impact the entry auction algorithm compared to the preseason.
All right, owners can start saving their pennies. Change will happen in the offseason, and make sure to put on a few pots of coffee for this Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, when we meet for the mid-season owners meetings. As always, Larry, thank you so much for joining me. I'd like you to get a little bit of rest before Sunday because it could be a long one. Thanks a lot, though.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Looking forward to Sunday and the rest of the stretch run.
This is UFHL Now with Dean Millard. Get in the game, where you own the game.
All right, lots to digest from that. You might want to watch it again to make sure you catch everything. And then, the owner meeting on Sunday is going to be a long one. Definitely get some coffee or whatever it is you use to stay awake. I'll definitely be rolling up some high-energy sativas for that one for sure. So that comes your way on Sunday. Of course, we want to tell you about the brand new Wicked website once again, www.uffsports.com. It has everything you need if you're new, and obviously if you're involved, you should also be exploring to see how it works. At some point, everything's going to run off here, and it's going to be so brilliant. It's great already. So much hard work being done behind the scenes with UFF Sports. So much amazing things, some game-changing ideas on the way. It is just so fun to be a part of this environment. All right, that means it is time to wrap things up for another episode. Big thanks to Larry Fisher for joining me on the show. Remember, we'll have those owner meetings on Sunday. The Pass Score Win Zil contest continues until May 1st. Get in on that. Join the Telegram chat, catch the NFT, and then pass it on and win some Zil. The pre-sale for SEO is May 1st. Check your emails about that special opportunity for early adopters. And also check your inbox for an awesome, amazing offer from Instat. This is could be game-changing for people in the scouting and ownership world. So make sure you check that out as well. All right, that's it for me. We'll see you guys. We'll talk to you guys on Sunday at the owners' meetings. Enjoy the weekend in fantasy. For Larry Fisher, I'm Dean Millard. This has been UFHL Now.
UFHL Now is produced by DM Productions. To get in touch, head to www.podcastalley.ca.